Verse chapter 32, verse 1. The tribes of Reuben and Gad owned vast numbers of livestock. So when they saw that the land of Jazer and Gilead were ideally suited for their flocks and herds, verse 2, they came to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the other leaders of the community. They said, verse 3, notice the towns of Atroth, Dibon, Jazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Eli, Sibma, Nebo, and beyond. Verse 4, the Lord has conquered this whole area for the community of Israel, and it is ideally suited for all our livestock. Verse 5, if we have found favor with you, please let us have this land as our property instead of giving us land across the Jordan River. Verse 6, do you intend to stay here while your brothers go across and do all the fighting? Moses asked the men of Gad and Reuben. Verse 7, why do you want to discourage the rest of the people of Israel from going across to the land the Lord has given them? Verse 8, your ancestors did the same thing when I sent them to Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. Verse 9, after they went up to the valley of Eshcol and explored the land, they discouraged the people of Israel from entering the land the Lord was giving them. Verse 10, then the Lord was very angry with them and he vowed. Verse 11, of all those I rescued from Egypt, no one who is 20 years old or older will ever see the land I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for they have not obeyed me wholeheartedly. Verse 12, the only exceptions are Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and the Kenizzite, and Joshua, son of Nun, for they have wholeheartedly followed the Lord. Verse 13, the Lord was angry with Israel and made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years until the entire generation that sin in the Lord's sight had died. Verse 14, but here you are, a brood of sinners, doing exactly the same thing. You are making the Lord even angrier with Israel. Verse 15, if you turn away from him like this and he abandons them again in the wilderness, you will be responsible for destroying this entire nation. Verse 16, but they approached Moses and said, we simply want to build pens for our livestock and fortified towns for our wives and children. Verse 17, then we will arm ourselves and lead our fellow Israelites into battle until we have brought them safely to their land. Meanwhile, our families will stay in the fortified towns we build here, so they will be safe from any attacks by the local people. Verse 18, we will not return to our homes until all the people of Israel have received their portions of land. Verse 19, but we do not claim any of the land on the other side of Jordan. We will rather live here on the east side and accept this as our grant of land. Verse 20, then Moses said, if you keep your word and arm yourself for the Lord's battle. Verse 21, and if your troops cross the Jordan and keep fighting until the Lord has driven out his enemy. Verse 22, then you may return when the Lord has conquered the land. You will have fulfilled your duty to the Lord and to the rest of the people of Israel, and the land on the east side of the Jordan will be your property from the Lord. Verse 23, but if you fail to keep your word, then you have sinned against the Lord, and you may be sure that your sin will find you out. Verse 24, go ahead and build towns for your families and pens for your flocks, but do everything you have promised. Verse 25, then the men of Gad and Reuben replied, we, your servants, will follow your instructions exactly. Verse 26, our children, wives, flocks, and cattle will stay here in the towns of Gilead. Verse 27, but all who are able to bear arms will cross over to fight for the Lord, just as you have said. Verse 28, so Moses gave orders to Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the leaders of the clans of Israel. Verse 29, he said, the men of Gad and Reuben who are armed for battle must cross the Jordan with you to fight for the Lord. if they do, give them the land of Gilead as their property when the land is conquered. Verse 30. But if they refuse to arm themselves and cross over with you, then they must accept the land with the rest of you in the land of Canaan. Verse 31. The tribes of Gad and Reuben said again, we are your servants, and we will do as the Lord has commanded. Verse 32. We will cross the Jordan into Canaan fully armed to fight for the Lord, but our property will be here on this side of the Jordan. Verse 33. So Moses assigned land to the tribes of Gad and Reuben, and half of the tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph. He gave them the territory of King Sihon of the Amorites, and the land of King Og of Bashan, the whole land with its cities and surrounding lands. Verse 34. The descendants of Gad built the towns of Dibon, Atroth, and Aroy. Verse 35. Atroth, Shiphan, Gaza, and Jogbeha. Verse 36. Beth Mirah and Beth Haran. These were the fortified towns with pens for their flocks. Verse 37. The descendants of Reuben built the towns of Heshbon, Eli, and Kiriath. Verse 38. Nebo, Baal-meon, and Sibmah. They changed the names of some of the towns they conquered and rebuilt. Verse 39. Then the descendants of Maki, of the tribe of Manasseh, went to Gilead and conquered it, and they drove out the Amorites living there. Verse 40. So Moses gave Gilead to the Macharites, descendants of Manasseh, and they settled there. Verse 41. The people of Jair, another clan of the tribe of Manasseh, captured many of the towns in Gilead and changed the name of that region to the town of Jair. Verse 42. Meanwhile, a man named Noba captured the town of Kenath and its surrounding villages, and he renamed that area Noba after himself.